Good morning, students. Today's topic is breathing and exchange of gases. So, what is breathing? Breathing is the exchange of gases. Okay, so breathing is the exchange of gases. Gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, they are exchanged by the process of breathing. It is a physical process in which gaseous exchange occurs from outside of the environment to our body. So this reaction takes place outside the cell. In this activity, no enzymes are involved and no energy is released. So now we will write some important points of the breathing, and also along with the breathing we should know another term, that is respiration. So on one side just write breathing and on the other side write respiration. Okay, so what is the basic difference between breathing and respiration? Breathing, it is the exchange of gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide, whereas respiration, it is the oxidation of food. Oxidation of food. Another important point is that breathing, it is a physical process. Breathing, it is a physical process in which only exchange of gases occurs, whereas respiration, it is a chemical process. Breathing, it is a physical process. So that is why no enzymes are involved in breathing. Whereas respiration, it is a chemical process. So for any chemical reaction, enzymes are required. So in respiration, enzymes are involved. Another important point is that during the breathing, no energy is released. Whereas in case of respiration, energy is released. Because in this, when the oxidation of food takes place, it releases energy in the form of ATP. ATP is the energy or unit of the cell. So this is the basic difference between breathing and respiration. The breathing, it is a physical process. It is a part of the respiration. Whereas respiration, it is the whole process in which breathing is included. Okay, in breathing, no energy is evolved, no enzymes are released, whereas in case of respiration, both energy and enzymes are involved. Okay, so now coming towards next is the respiratory organs. There are different, as we know that there are different types of the organisms that are present. So for different types of the organisms, different types of the respiratory organs are present. So write respiratory organs. As we know that there are invertebrates and vertebrates. So we will discuss the different respiratory organs first in case of the vertebrates and then in case of invertebrates. So in case of vertebrates, the first point is in case of fishes, gills are present for the respiration to occur. Then second, in case of amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Lungs are present for the respiration, whereas in case of amphibians like frogs, respiratory organ is both lungs and skin. So in this, the respiration can take place both by skin and by lungs. Okay, so this is in case of invertebrates, that in case of fishes, gills are present, and in case of the terrestrial forms, amphibians, reptiles, birds and mammals, lungs are present as a respiratory organ. So moving towards next is in case of invertebrates. So in case of invertebrates, where lower organisms are present, like sponges, coelentrates, platforms, arthropods, mollusks. So in case of sponges, coelentrates, platforms, the respiration takes place by diffusion, that is the body surface. Through the body surface, respiration takes place. Whereas in case of earthworm, the respiration takes place through the skin, that is known as moist cuticle, and the respiration which takes place through the skin is known as cutaneous respiration. Okay, so respiration in earthworm can take place through the skin is known as cutaneous respiration. Whereas in case of insects, there is a tube which is present known as tracheal tube. Tracheal tube for the respiration. Then in case of aquatic forms like arthropods and mollusks, respiration takes place through gills. And in case of terrestrial forms, the respiration takes place through lungs. So this is the in case of the invertebrates, there are different organisms and different organisms use different types of the respiratory organs. In case of sponges, coelentrates, platforms, they are the lower invertebrates in which the respiration takes place through diffusion. And then in case of the earthworm, the respiration takes place through the moist cuticle, and then in case of insects, the respiration takes place through tracheal tube, and in case of aquatic forms, the respiration takes place through gills, and in case of the terrestrial forms, the respiration takes place through the lungs. So this was about the different respiratory organs. Now moving towards our main topic, that is human respiratory system. So in this chapter, we will study about the human respiratory system, which is the lungs. So write down human respiratory system. The human respiratory system, it consists of two parts. One is the conducting zone, and second is the respiratory zone. So whole respiration takes place through these two zones, that is conducting zone and respiratory zone. In case of conducting zone, In case of conducting zone, the gaseous exchange from external environment to the lungs. Got it? And in case of respiratory zone, the exchange of the gases occurs between alveoli and blood. So now let us study in detail about firstly the conducting zone. What is conducting zone? In which the exchange of gases occurs from the environment to the lungs. So suppose this is the air. The air from the environment, it goes into the external nostrils. From the external nostrils, the air goes into nasal cavity. From the nasal cavity, it goes into internal nostrils. As it goes into internal nostrils, there comes a pharynx, and the particular type of pharynx that comes after the internal nostrils is nasopharynx. Okay, so after the nasopharynx, the air goes into laryngopharynx. From the laryngopharynx, the air goes into trachea, bronchi, and the last is bronchioles. Okay, so this was all the process that takes place in the conducting zone. The air from the environment, it goes into the lungs, that is up to the bronchioles. After that, the alveoli and the blood part that comes under the respiratory zone. So now let us study about this conducting zone part with the help of the diagram. So here, just draw with me and then I will explain you the whole. Okay, so now okay, so now let us label and understand this whole diagram. So in the conducting zone, as we have studied earlier in our previous slide here, that the air from the environment, it goes through the external nostrils into the internal nostrils through the nasal cavity. So here, the air present here in the environment, it goes into our body through the external nostrils. So I'm just writing the first word, external nostrils. So from the external nostrils, it goes into the nasal cavity. What is this? Nasal cavity. Okay. So from the nasal cavity, it goes into the internal nostrils. Okay. So air from the external nostrils goes into the internal nostrils through the nasal cavity. So after the nasal cavity, there comes a nasopharynx. Okay, so from the internal nostrils, the air goes into nasopharynx and then into the laryngopharynx. So just label here nasopharynx. It is that part which opens from the nasal part, and this is the laryngopharynx that contains larynx, laryngopharynx, which is also known as voice box, okay, which contains vocal cords and helps in the sound production. Okay, so moving towards next, after the laryngopharynx, their trachea starts. After the larynx, trachea starts. So mention here trachea and then bronchi. Trachea, it goes and forms the bronchi. Bronchi then further divides into bronchioles. Bronchi, it divides into two bronchioles, and both of these bronchioles they are surrounded by the lungs. Okay, so this is our bronchi, and bronchi, it divides into two bronchioles, and each of these bronchiole, it is surrounded by the two lungs. Okay, this is the right lung. This is the left lung. Okay, so now let us study that the membrane of the lungs. The membrane of the lung is known as periosteum. It is a double membrane layer, in which outer membrane is known as parietal and inner membrane is known as visceral peritoneum. Outer is known as parietal peritoneum and inner is known as visceral peritoneum. Okay. So now, as you can see that I have drawn the right lung a little bit bigger as compared to the left lung, because right lung is little bit bigger than the left lung. So right lung, it is divided into three lobes. Okay, the right lung, it is divided into three lobes, whereas left lung, it is divided into only two lobes. So just write the names of all the three lobes. The first is the superior lobe, then middle lobe, and the third is the inferior lobe. And in case of the left lung, there is a two lobes only, that is superior and inferior lobe. There is a presence of space between the left and the right lung. This is known as mediastrum. Mediastrum. Okay, and inside this space is present heart. Okay, this is our heart. So where is the location of our heart? That is between two lungs and provides spore to both of these lungs and to our heart, there is a presence of diaphragm. So what is this? Diaphragm that provides support to our lungs and heart. Okay, so let me explain you again that the air from the external nostrils, it goes into the internal nostrils, and from the internal nostrils it goes into nasopharynx and then the laryngopharynx and then bronchi. It divides into bronchioles. Bronchioles, it gets divided and is covered by lungs, right lung and left lung. Left lung is little bit bigger as compared to the left lung, and the space present between them is known as mediastinum, and there is a presence of heart between the both lungs, and there is a presence of diaphragm that provides support to both the lungs and the heart. Okay, so this was all about our conducting zone. So the next, that was a respiratory zone. In case of respiratory zone, the exchange of gases takes place between the alveoli and the blood. So let me just show you that where are alveoli present. So at the end of these bronchioles, they are divided into primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchioles. Okay, and at the end of the bronchioles, there are present pouch-like bags which are known as alveoli. So just mention here alveoli that helps in the exchange of the gases. Okay, so that was all about our human respiratory system. Okay, and just note down only one point is left, that is the functions of the conducting zone. That when air, it goes from the environment to our body through the nostrils, what are the functions of this conducting zone? That air might be contaminated, that temperature may be different. So what does it help? It helps in the humidification of the air. Second, bring the air to normal temperature. Third, filtration of air. That is, it helps to filter the air so that if any bacteria is present, it will remove. Okay, so that was just a brief description about the human respiratory system. It's two parts. Now, tomorrow we will discuss in detail about each of the parts that is involved during the respiratory system. So that is all for today. Thank you.